Welcome to another edition of the Bruin Bible. We are so lucky to have the LA Football Network founder in the house, my man, Ryan Dyrud. What is going on, brother?
What's up, my man? Thanks for having me on again. You're doing a great job with the show. Super proud and honored to have it on the network. So love seeing what you've done growing it, and happy to be back on talking Bruin football.
Man, proud to be a part of this great network, LA Football, all across the board, professional and college. We do want to give a heads up. We are potentially doing a tailgate for the USC-UCLA game next weekend. Want to spread the word on that. We're going to have more details coming next week, so make sure to listen to the pod with that. Anyone who's a fan of the pod, fan of the network, is welcome to come on out, grab a beer with us, talk about your opinions. We'd love to hear them. But let's get into it. Chip Kelly. Hot seat is incredibly hot right now for our guy out in Westwood. 15-25 career record. He's coming off some tough losses. Granted, we had Ethan Garbers in there for Utah, but Utah blew the door down on us. Kind of give me your thoughts on just how hot Chip Kelly's seat is, and do you think it's crazy for UCLA to potentially move in another direction at season's end?
Well, I feel like it wasn't that hot not that long ago, like just maybe even 10 days ago, where it was like, yeah, it's a little tepid, like it's getting warm for sure. And then how they just get blown. Cause I think a lot of it, and this is, I don't know how many people agree with this, but DTR has been the unquestioned starter. No doubt. And the team kind of rolls through DTR, but there's that other side of the coin that a lot of people have thought, well, what could this team be without him? Like maybe he's holding them back. I've heard that many times. I mean, I've probably even said it before, like, DTR is maybe holding this team back because we saw what they did last year with Chase Griffin when he didn't turn the ball over, and they were a more competitive team sometimes. So then we saw last week, like, okay, we're seeing Garbers in there going against a big Utah foe. Maybe this is our chance to see if maybe they're better without DTR. And they absolutely were not. And they had the doors blown off. The defense is, everything we thought about the defense coming into this year that was quieted those first 2 weeks is now louder than ever. And unfortunately, I never like talking negative about these kids because they work, but just statistically, they're a very bad defense. Like they're a poor defense that don't stop much of anybody. So the fact that we're still seeing the same things go wrong and the inconsistency with this program where 1 week they look great, they get our hopes up, the next week they look terrible. That I think is why Chip Kelly's seat truly is like scorching hot now. And the fact that Martin Jarmon, new AD, inherited Chip, has given him the resources to be great. I know it's only been a year, but, he's done everything he can to get more fans in the stands. He's given him tools to recruit. He's backed him fully. He got game day here to hype up this program. And the fact that they're still sitting where they are, losing big Pac-12 games that at this point, 4 years in, they should be winning or at least more competitive in. That's when it's like, okay, this thing really might need to be a change of direction with the new AD, just starting over fresh with the guy that he brings in.
I think you're spot on. And Ben Bolch wrote a phenomenal artist, a friend of the podcast, about Chip Kelly, and he believes it's time to move on. He doesn't think there's anything elite about Chip Kelly, and he makes a valid point. I mean, he's got a .375 winning percentage in his time at Westwood. That is the lowest of a coach that does not have an interim tag in the history of UCLA. You mentioned the defense. Let me give you the past defensive statistics for 4 years with Azanero. So his first year, they were the 86th ranked pass defense, not great, and it's only gotten progressively worse. It went to 129th in the 2018 season. Ryan, there are 130 FBS teams. They were the second worst in all of college football. They were 113th last year, and kind of the buzz around the pass defense was, is it going to be great? No, but, they got all seniors back there. They're bound to figure it out. These are veteran players. It's 119th this year. The pass defense has been the Achilles heel year after year. And as an arrow, this guy is getting paid $700,000 a year, doesn't speak to the media. this is the Achilles heel of Chip Kelly's coaching staff. And I know they're lifelong friends and, guys that have kind of grown up through the coaching ranks together. But boy, this is an industry if you can get the job done or you can't. And he clearly cannot get the job done on the defense when it comes to the pass. The rush defense, it looks better than it is because they blitz a lot and they do generate some sacks. But boy, when you're bringing 7-8 guys in the box, that leaves your defense, especially your secondary, fighting for help back there. It's just not a good situation. The numbers show that. To put that in comparison, Jim Mora, a guy who was consistently ripped for his time at UCLA, went 46-30 at UCLA. I mean, that's a winning record at least. Just got hired by UConn. Yeah, congrats to our guy Mora out there at UConn. But I think it's time. And if he doesn't win these next 3 games, which I think are all incredibly winnable, we're going to talk about Colorado in a second, who is our opponent this upcoming weekend. A really depleted SC team, and they no longer have Drake London, who's probably going to be the first wide receiver taking the NFL draft. And then a Cal team who has just been struggling to impress anybody. They lost to U of A this past weekend. Yeah. I mean, just not a good team in general. I think if you don't win these 3 games, I think Chip Kelly, I think the time has come. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, and the biggest thing with coaching, too, is you have to be able to make tough decisions. Obviously, you need to win football games. But the fact that he has still trotted out as an arrow as his DC, it's mind-boggling considering what those stats you just read with this defense and what they've done. And they play a fun brand of football. I get it. Like it's, very high risk, high reward, or, high risk, big give up gains and big shots. That ASU game, they gave up 5 big plays and all of them turned into touchdowns and they ended up getting blown out. And the rest, they actually played decent the rest of the game. So, but what it comes down to is as a head coach, you need to say, okay, this is not the winning formula that we're doing, and make a decision to move on. And the fact that he hasn't touched his coaching staff, left it intact, is enough, I think, that it's a bad stain on his tenure here. And then you obviously have the win-loss record. But I would agree with you. I think coming into this year, where we talked about right in the beginning, and I've been on other shows and talked to other reporters about it, and I believed if he won, 7 to 8 games, his job would probably be safe. And, you win 2 of the next 3, that's 7 wins. You win all 3, that's 8 wins. But I think just the way the season's gone and the roller coaster it's been and the way you've lost to good teams and the fact that you're losing a lot of players this year and there's not a really dynamic recruiting class coming in, I don't know if you do want to keep him around and start over next year again with this, just the kind of uneasiness that's been this year. Like if the season went differently, you ended up 8-5 or whatever it be, 8-4, then you might be safe. But just the fact that it's, they've lost to every competitive Pac-12 team and then beat the bad ones, I don't think that's what you want for your future, and it might be time to move on.
I think you're spot on with that. And if they were to fire Chip Kelly, I want to throw a name into the ranks that I don't think has been really heard, at least from the USC standpoint. A guy that's coached on the West Coast for the majority of his career, and he's now in Los Angeles as a Fox Sports analyst. What about Chris Peterson? He has a relationship with Jarman, kind of the guy who takes the job that maybe not the headline job. He took Washington when he could have taken any job in the country, kind of rebuilt that program. He did the toughest thing in college football was, at least to me, the toughest thing is to put a program on the map effectively. He did that with Boise State. No one was talking about Boise State before Chris Peterson got there. He turned them into an FBS powerhouse for a non-Power 5 school. Peterson has a 7.95 winning percentage. That's the 13th highest in the history of college football. The guy continually wins year after year. What do you think about potential of Peterson maybe being a guy that could come in there as like a hire if Chip Kelly were to leave?
I mean, it'd be a slam dunk if they could get it. That should be the first person they call. I just don't know if he would want to do it. And like you said, it might be intriguing because it's less high profile than like SC. I know when he was even asked about SC, he basically said, nope, I'm happy. I'm staying in television. I'm taking time off. I want to be with my family, yada, yada, yada. But SC is a high stress, high profile job that you are criticized for every single thing you do. Not saying UCLA isn't a good job as well, but it's more of a basketball school we've talked about. You can kind of fly under the radar a little bit, especially after this Chip Kelly tenure. He could come in his first year and win 7 games and everyone would, raise the banner on him just for what he's done in just his first year. So it'd be a slam dunk hire. I just don't know if he's willing to leave broadcasting to do it. But to your point, for him, I could see him actually being more willing to take the UCLA job versus the SC job, just because what I just said. It's a little less profile, not as much stress, not as much pressure. He can kind of put it on the map, like you said. It's not already on the map and, failing. He can put it on the map, and so he can kind of put another check mark under his name about programs that he's built from nothing. Not that UCLA is nothing, but they really haven't been anything for a decade, 2 decades. So I love the fit, Will. It'd be fantastic. I just don't know if he wants to come out of retirement to do it.
And the thing I love is he really builds secondaries. What he built at Washington, all those guys, the Buda Bakers, the Byron Murphys going to the NFL at the next level. Boy, could we use that in Westwood, some stud defensive backs. But, like I said, this guy he just doesn't follow the normal pattern coaches do. He went to Washington as opposed to going to an SEC school when he could have had those jobs. I mean, this is a guy that could have taken any job he wanted for 5 years, and he took the lower profile Washington. USC, he would definitely be turned off by, but I think UCLA and what the option provides, hey, it doesn't hurt to ask, is like I like to say it. So let's keep an eye out on our guy, Chris Peterson, potentially coming in there. Let's move on to the Colorado game. This is a must-win for UCLA. This is frankly just not a good team. They are the 128th ranked offense in the entire country. We just mentioned earlier there's 130 FBS teams. They're 3-5 on the year. Brendan Lewis, I mean, that guy is arguably the worst quarterback in the Pac-12. Despite whoever U of A is trying out, maybe a Will Plummer. Give me your thoughts on UCLA in this must-win game for them.
Well, it actually matches up good for him if you look, just talking strictly football and matchup-wise, because Colorado has a very poor offense, like you said, and they have a better defense, but not lights out. And so it bodes well for UCLA that has a good offense. I mean, they do have a good offense. Let's not be wrong with that. I think they average close to 30 points a game, and they have a bad defense. So their good offense goes against a decent defense. Their bad defense goes against a bad offense. It's a good matchup. UCLA should come out on top. Obviously, their bread and butter is the run game, which continually in these losses we've seen them get away from. And part of that is because the defense can't stop the offense. So they kind of have to go out and air it out, which I don't think that'll be an issue in this one. So I would think that UCLA runs the ball 30 plus times in this game. They're able to keep Colorado's offense off the field. Even when Colorado's offense is on the field, I think this UCLA defense, because of the pressure they bring, because of what they want to do on offense with those high risk plays, and with how poor the quarterback play has been for the Buffs, I don't see Colorado doing much in this game at all. It's just a matchup game where I think UCLA can blow this team out 100%. And I know a lot of people might not think that because of how UCLA has been playing, but just because of how it matches up, I would not be shocked at all if this is a 34-7 end of game.
I'll take it a step further. I think they need to blow out Colorado.
You're 100% right.
If there's any doubt, like U of A, they were struggling with, a couple weeks back. I mean, that is the worst Power 5 team in the country for my money. If you struggle at all against Colorado, boy, that seed is going to turn up to about 500 degrees for Chip Kelly and what's coming there. And I think this is a team that, is capable of doing it. We've continually have come on here and said this is the best run game within the Pac-12. You have 2 backs. We're going to get to talking about those guys in just a second that, probably have a future in the NFL. And I just really think with the offensive line we have, you throw in Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who should be back healthy this week, running as a dual threat guy. That's a huge option you have. The run game is too strong for UCLA to lose this. Anything less than a 14, 21 point victory for me, that is a robbery for UCLA. So let's see how they take it there. The next segment we have is a first for the Bruin Bible. Ryan, we're going to do a stock up, stock down report on some of the skill position players. For those who've been listening to the pod, we did a preseason ranking on what we thought these guys would be. We're kind of circling back around. We're going to do the quarterback position. We're going to talk about the running backs and the wide receivers as well as tight ends. Let's start with our guy, DTR. Ryan, has DTR had a better season than you imagined or, essentially a worse one?
That's a great one. And I think based on my expectation, and we could play the clip back, I'm sure, on your show, but I was pretty high on this kid for his senior year. I thought if he played to his potential, he could work his way into maybe not round 1, but a round 2, round 3 pick in the NFL. And so maybe that was just maybe unfair expectations, because I don't think he's had a bad year, but he hasn't lived up to that expectation. He's still, a mid-round to late to even undrafted free agent, I think, in the draft. He's done some really good things. He's definitely gotten smarter with the football, turned it over way less. He's cut down those head scratching plays that make you throw stuff at the TV. So in that regards, he's gotten way better. He's played clutch in some big moments, but I think the thing that he hasn't yet reached that level is that he can just take over a game. Like there's times when UCLA will be ahead and then not saying he does a turnover, but they just get like 3 or 4 3-and-outs, or they're behind. He gets 3 or 4 3-and-outs, and it takes a heroic effort in the last like 2 possessions and a turnover coming late or something like that to keep them in it. So I think he's played well. I think probably by the standards of most media people out there, his stock has probably gone up. Based on my expectations to the year, it's gone down, but I think I probably just had unfair expectations for him. So he's had a good year, not great by any means though.
I think you're spot on. The stats paint a different picture than what I anticipated for DTR. For this year, he's thrown for over 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's done well without turning over the ball. I mean, I'm a 49ers fan, so it's kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo. You could just pencil in an interception for him, either the first half or the second half. That's just his game. That's what he does. Yeah. It was like that with DTR earlier in the career. He's going to make 2 or 3 dumb throws. He's really cut down on those, which I think is very impressive. But we were talking about, him early this year, and I threw out the word potential Heisman candidate if he was able to figure things out. Because this guy's skill set, I mean, it's no secret to anyone who watches UCLA. You look at some of the plays this guy can make, and it's like, okay, maybe 5 to 10 quarterbacks can make that in the entire country. This guy, 14 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's also rushed for 6 touchdowns and 364 yards. He can just make plays out of nothing when the pocket's collapsing, things of that nature. But, I'd be lying if I said I am not a little disappointed in how this year went for him. I thought, like you thought, especially with how the NFL is, moving towards the Justin Fields types, the Trey Lance, the quarterbacks that can move outside the pocket, make all the crazy throws. I thought with a good year, this guy could have been a high, second round pick, maybe even a first if you played his cards right. I just don't even foresee that now, even in a weak quarterback class where a guy like Malik Willis is supposedly the number 1 guy, or, the Pittsburgh quarterback that it's eluding my mind right now.
Yeah.
But, I just didn't see it. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think he had arguably his best moment this year, the Stanford game, gutsy as hell. I mean, this guy was knocked off the field, came back for a play, led the game-winning touchdown throw. The guy
if he doesn't get knocked out against Oregon, maybe he has a bigger moment there and takes him back. So the guy played well. It just wasn't here. And here's the last thing I'll say about it. Will, sorry to cut you off, but when I watched DTR play this season, and this is going to sound contradictory, so hopefully I can make it make sense. But here's a guy that when the play breaks down and he goes off script, he can be very successful. But when the game as a whole breaks down and the offense as a whole is off script, he struggles mightily. Like they need that reinforcement of the running game. He needs that game script to build into his skill set. And so when they get down 2 touchdowns and they need him to put the team on his back, he just wasn't able to do so. Like when these Utah, Arizona State games got ugly early, everyone knew it was over. And unfortunately it was.
I could not agree more with that. I mean, that's a perfect analysis on what DTR's season has been thus far. A little disappointed, but there's nothing wrong. He's had a great career at UCLA. Deserves all the credit. The next guy I want to target is Charbonnet. And, for me, it's an easy stock up. I want to hear what your thoughts have been on the beast, Zach Charbonnet, out in the UCLA backfield.
Oh, it's definitely stock up. It's surprising when you look statistically. He's like 38th in the nation in rushing, which I thought he'd be much higher, but I guess just because they use a 2-back system, some of those games he was getting like 9 carries, 10 carries. But what this guy does with the football, man, I mean, even if he doesn't come back, which I think he will, only basically playing his freshman year, not really playing much at all at Michigan his sophomore year, and then transferring and having a good season this year. So I think he'll come back just to raise his stock. But even if he doesn't, I think he'll still be one of the top backs taken just because of what skill he provides, what he does with the football, how he can not only run power I between the tackles, but can also run zone on the outside, make people miss, but also just be a bruiser and break. I mean, he has to be, I don't know, maybe you have the stats in front of you, but he has to be one of the top players in broken tackles this season, I would think, because watching him run the football is just fun. So stock up for sure for Charbonnet this year. And I hope he comes back for one more year because I'd like to see him, in that powder blue one more time.
I'd love to see him back for another year, but boy, if the NFL's calling, I mean, this guy has the chance to be one of the top 5 backs taken in the draft.
When we were talking,
we were
talking in our group chat with all of us UCLA guys at LAFB Network about he's literally reminds us of a blend of Joshua Kelly and Demetric Felton. Like, he has the power of Joshua Kelly, but the elusiveness of Demetric Felton, but he's also, 5'11", 220. So that he has that going for him.
He has the strongest legs I've seen from a running back, like just in terms of just shedding tackles, and they are like pistons firing on all cylinders when this guy's running in the open field. It is in, like, tell me if I'm like too high on him, but it is in the like same category as a Marshawn Lynch for me, at least at the college level that I've seen. The way how hard he runs, it is a ferocity that goes, you guys can bring 6 or 7 guys, I'm not going down type of thing. And I mean, he was the LSU game, you have Mike Jones Jr. is going to be a high round pick. He was throwing him to the ground like it was nothing, like it was a JV player. So Charbonnet, for me, I could not have a higher stock. I think he's probably the best running back at UCLA since Maurice Jones-Drew. So, Charbonnet has been an absolute stud. Easy stock up on that. Another guy.
And last point, sorry, Will. I keep cutting. It's your show.
No, you're good, brother.
Just got to get this in here. The thing about this too, I mentioned that he's 38th in the nation in rushing yards, but some people say, "Oh man, that's not as good of a year as we thought." NFL teams see that and say, "This guy has a lot of tread left on his tires, considering he barely played his sophomore year and was in a 2-back system his junior year. We know what he can do with the football. We see his explosiveness. We could give a rip about how many yards he finished with. I mean, we've seen backs that rush for 200 yards getting taken early. So they see the potential and the high tread he has and the little usage. And I bet NFL GMs are just salivating getting this guy in NFL rooms. So I would be shocked if he's back his senior year. I hope he is, but I think he'll be in the NFL next season and probably pretty high, like Javonte Williams high, like second round.
I think so too, man. I think he's going to be one of the first backs taken. And like you said, I don't think the stats are going to affect him at all, because if you watch any UCLA, you have 2 professional running backs back there with Britton Brown, who we're going to get to right now. Britton Brown, solid year so far. I mean, Charbonnet's kind of been the star of the backfield, but I mean, Brown is just as solid as he was a year ago. 96 carries, 6 touchdowns, averaging 5.8 yards a carry. Pretty much in the same ballpark. He's about 550, 600 yards this year. Give me your thoughts on Britton Brown, because for me, when you said NFL, potential running back on our original pod, I was kind of like, I don't know, maybe. Like, I saw the 6 yards per carry. That was pretty impressive. But just when he's been able to do it again, I'm like, okay, this guy, he may not be drafted till the 5th or 6th round, given how running backs are treated, but there's definitely a spot for this guy in the league.
Oh, yeah. He has the body, the skill set, the frame, the power. You mentioned, the 5.6 yards per carry. So extremely efficient and productive. And the NFL now, too, is adapting more. I mean, we can probably name on one hand how many dominant running backs there are in the NFL that are just like the featured backs. Like almost every team is running.
Now it's Derrick Henry,
Yeah, literally. That's probably about it. Every NFL team is adopting this kind of college, or we can even just call it the UCLA system of having 2 to 3 back stables. And Britton Brown is absolutely fit for that build. Now, can he go and be the featured back? I mean, I don't know if I don't think you need to be in the NFL nowadays, but he has a spot in the NFL. His stock is definitely raised. And I think, like you alluded to, Will, what's raised is the fact that he's repeated exactly what he did last year with the efficiency, with the change of pace, with the style he runs with. So, he'll be a draft pick as well. It's going to be tough to replace those 2 guys if they're both gone. I mean, it's very rare that teams replace players at a high caliber level. UCLA, probably why they haven't been so great is they haven't been able to do that, but they have at the running back position. When you go from Joshua Kelly to Demetric Felton to Britton Brown and Zach Charbonnet, but going in the next year, if they're both gone, that's going to be really hard to replicate and, get some production out of those 2 guys, because they're sky high.
Sky high. I mean, that's a recruiting tool forever. The next coach comes in. We get running backs to the NFL here at UCLA.
Yeah.
Another guy I want to talk about in terms of position groups that get people to the NFL, the tight end position, Greg Dulcich. We could not be higher on Greg Dulcich on this podcast. Obviously a dream guest for the Bruin Bible at some point. He came off a year in 2020 when he had 26 grabs, 517 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And this year he's got 31 grabs, 477 yards, and 4 TDs. Stock up or stock down for Mr. Dulcich?
I think it's still up. I think it should be higher up, and that's nothing against him. I think he's played well. He just hasn't been utilized as much as I think expected. And even if you watch every broadcast, every analyst and broadcast was like, man, they got to get Dulcich involved here. Like, this is a Dulcich play. Like, when are they going to get the rock to Dulcich? And he never disappoints. I think he had against Oregon, he had one drop that I remember was like, that was a bad drop. But other than that, his season has been very successful. He's produced when he's been called upon. He just hasn't been called upon a lot. So to me, his stock is still up because what he's been able to do with the time he's been given and the amount of times the ball's been thrown his way, he's been successful and produced. But it'd be a lot higher if they used him at a higher clip and were able to get him more production. So still up, but I think it should be higher up, and that's nothing against him. It's more just scheme and play call.
I'm with you 1,000% on this one. Dulcich, for me, it's almost a crime what they're doing to him, because this guy is,
right?
We've said it. I mean, he might be the most talented tight end in the country this year. Ryan, this just makes me sick, this stat. 6 of the 9 games this year, he has 3 or few catches. Like, that just can't happen for a guy that's that talented. And,
just feed him.
Just feed him the rock. I mean, it's not hard. You have a Ferrari in the garage. You might as well drive it. That's the way I like to look at it. It's just been a frustrating thing with our guy Dulcich, and it's not his fault.
It's like going to the garage and seeing the Ferrari and be like, I just feel like saving gas miles and driving the Civic. And you just do that constantly and never break out the Ferrari. Yeah,
this Prius, gets me from A to B. I have a Ferrari, but I don't drive. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, why even buy the Ferrari? It makes no sense.
If you had the means to buy it, drive it.
Exactly. And it's just like, you have something that no other team has. And we've seen him. It's not like he's been dropping passes. I mean, the LSU game, he swung the game the other direction with that 75-yard touchdown catch. And that huge third down conversion he had. That's against all NFL players on that defense. Like, you cannot tell me that Dulcich is not playing well. And a part of me was excited that Garber's got in because it's more of a pass, friendly system, a pro style. And he did get targeted a little bit more against Utah, which I was excited about. But boy, if you're not drawing up plays for this guy, maybe it is time for Chip Kelly to go. That's my thought process. Because you're just
that alone is enough.
That alone is enough. And our guy Dulcich, if you're listening to this, please come on the podcast. We would love to have you. Last guy I got for you, Ryan, before we wrap things up, Kyle Phillips. I have an opinion on this guy. I want to hear yours first, though.
So what I said in the first show. I love Kyle Phillips. I think he's a great possession receiver. What's funny, and this is nothing against him, but Jamal, one of our contributors, wrote an article going into the Utah game that when Phillips has 6 or more catches, UCLA has not won a game this year. When he's targeted less than 6, they're undefeated. So typically, obviously, those losses, they're playing catch up, throwing the ball more, and then Phillips is going to be more involved. But I just thought that was a funny stat and interesting. But again, that's not it. Yeah, but that's not against him and his play, because I think he's a big time player. He's come up big when the Bruins have needed him, made some big catches. He can stretch the field. He's a good blocker. Obviously, we can see he could do stuff on special teams. So for me, the stock on him is up because we talked about in preseason about needing to have a big year, put up more statistics because we knew he had the talent, the playmaking ability. But then statistically, I think he's backed that up this year for the most part. Obviously, some games haven't been there, missed a game this season as well. But overall, I think he's played great, and he's a guy I love that I think is going to make an NFL team very happy. But I'm curious if you agree or disagree.
No, I actually am fully on the train. I was about to say, coming into this year, you look at the measurables, you look at the stats, not a whole lot of, yards after the catch type of thing. It's like, I don't know. I mean, he's a solid college player. I've totally flipped. Outside of Charbonnet, maybe this guy might have the highest stock raised for me on UCLA. And he's led the team in catches the last 2 years before this. The Stanford game is the game that really opened my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
The 75-yard catch over the middle, he took to the house. 5 catches, 120-yard game, 2 touchdowns. Even the LSU game, I mean, he had that 45-yard touchdown catch where he got out of Elias Ricks' tackle, who's going to be a day one prospect in the NFL. Listen, I don't know if he'll get drafted, but he's the type of guy that we'll be reading a blog about when NFL training camps come out. It'll be like, Kyle Phillips, the undrafted free agent rookie. Boy, he's looking really good on day 3, and he might make this roster. He just has that vibe, and he just is a gamer. He makes big-time plays in big-time moments. That fourth down catch with Garbers for Oregon, I mean, that was a huge catch.
Huge.
So this guy makes plays, and I'm sold on this kid. Like, if I don't know, we both don't run a team, but if this guy doesn't get drafted, he's one of the first phone calls I'm making, after the draft to get an undrafted free agent rookie in there.
I think he will. And who he reminds me of, and I always caution people when I make these comparisons. When you make like a pro or a college to pro comp, you're comparing what like their potential is. You're not saying, oh, he's as good as this player. So I don't want people to think that when I say this, but with what he'll do in the NFL, and just because I watch both these guys so much being in LA, he reminds me of the potential of like a Cooper Kupp in the sense that he can play from the slot. They have a similar size. Kyle Phillips is about like 5'11", 6 foot, 200, similar 40 times and stuff. And we'll see what Phillips does, at the combine or whatnot. But he reminds me of that will be his role in the NFL as that kind of slot guy, that possession receiver when you got to have it on third down. And then obviously Kupp now has, gone way above and beyond and is considered one of the top, receivers in the entire NFL. I'm not saying Kyle Phillips will be that, but he does have that skill set and that look-alike ability of what Kupp's done in the NFL so far. So I think he has a lot of potential. I think he will get drafted, in my opinion.
I hope so. Ryan, this was a ton of fun, my man. Let's do this again soon. Fans listening to the podcast, come see us at the Coliseum next Saturday for the USC-UCLA game. Like I said earlier, we'll have more details on that. But Bruin Bible, we're out.